you've achieved it, at least for now. All right. Okay. I think it's funny that the only person visible is the man and the three girls are not.
That's fine.
I mean, ta-da.
Oh, give us a human face, Sean. It's good
Oh
marketing.
God, this is the face? Ugh, I'm sorry.
And just the lighting isn't very good here, and I just don't want to mess with it. I'm like, oh.
All right. Well, as we all know, this live stream will end pretty quickly if I try to actually use my internet for video. Okay, well, it is 6:33 p.m. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Do a quick attendance. Tess.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Ren is not here. Sean.
Here?
And Kevin is not here. And we have one member of the public in attendance right now. Oh, and Catherine is here, the chair. Diving in with the minutes, review and approve committee minutes. The materials are available under committee meeting documents at gtlnc.org. So motion A, approve the GTLNC November 2nd, 2021 Governmental Affairs Committee minutes. Do I have a first to open discussion?
First.
I'm sorry, who was that?
The only guy, Sean.
Sean, thank you. And do I have a second?
Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, I will make a comment that I had removed something in an effort to just trim the minutes. And I don't know if Tess, you would like me to add it back in related to, or is it under number 9, duties and powers, reserving the powers to the committee collectively.
And to council. Yeah,
to the council collectively.
Yeah, I think that's important. Do you want me to read it to you? It's one sentence.
Sure.
Okay, so under number 9, the last sentence that was struck should be, the committee's consensus was that the council should set policy, approve and disapprove proposals, and that the council should reserve all other authorities to itself collectively.
The only reason I trimmed it was to try to, make it more concise. And I felt like all of that is technically already part of the purpose of the GTLNC. So that was why I took it out. But
yeah, I mean, and that's not a bad reason. And I feel strongly that it should be there. So I appreciate you reinserting it. And I do appreciate also you catching 1 or 2 errors that I made. So thank you.
So we need to do a quick vote on whether or not to add that line back in. Sorry, my cat. Okay, so we'll just do a quick roll call. Tess?
Yes, please.
Kelly?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
I'm a no, but we'll go ahead and add that back in, which means, is there any other discussion related to the minutes as amended? Jonathan, I see your hand up. You can unmute.
Hi, thank you. I'm happy everybody had a nice Thanksgiving. You're talking about number 9 right now, and I'm not understanding I heard what you said, but I don't understand what's in these minutes. Number 9, what is the significance of that? And the reason I'm asking that is what I read in number 9 that is the president's role's main purpose to prepare with input from the council. I don't understand what that means, and I don't understand why it's in, what does it mean that it's in the minutes, that's what you're sending to be approved?
That's what we're saying was discussed at the last meeting and sort of agreed upon as the summary of what we'd like that section of the bylaws to state.
And by the way, Jonathan, I would add that this is, again, just a summary. The exact language will be hammered out. And it was my strong feeling that if we present our committee consensus to the general board in the shortest language possible, that will have the highest probability of being understood and then approved. Whereupon we go back, then we return and hammer out the exact language. Does that make sense?
Yes, let me ask a question so I'll understand. Are you saying that the president's main role in preparing the agenda is to make it with input from the council, which eliminates a council member's ability to submit an agenda item without question? Are you eliminating that? Because that's
no. This is meant to say that the council will be able to put things on the agenda.
How does it say that? Where is it?
I mean, again, this is intended as a summary, so the input from council was meant to cover that.
Okay.
Is
Let
there
me
a
ask
better
you-
way you'd like us to put that in the minutes?
It's not clear there, but it's okay with me, whatever it says, as long as the people here, the board members here, have it in their hearts. That's my whole point as to what's crippling the neighborhood council, that it doesn't have the ability to represent, and it didn't for 3 years at minimum in West Toluca, like because of this very fact. So that's my concern, is however you want to go about it, I'm understanding and believing in you that you're pushing forward so that the agenda items can be submitted by each council member, by each member of the council.
That is
Yes.
certainly my 110% intent, because to not be able to agendize something as a board member is to basically, make this something very undemocratic. So that's my intent. And I believe that's the intent of everyone here. So
I'd be interested to hear from any board member who disagrees with that. Is there anyone?
Not in this group.
Okay,
The only thing that I will say is that there are some things that can't be agendized for legal reasons. And so there are going to be times where the president will, in consultation with Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, probably have to remove things from the agenda only as directed when they can't be agendized. But
sure, I understand.
But
I mean, I
can
will
you-
say our Congress doesn't exactly do it this way.
Can you give just a very brief summary of what those items are, Catherine? That
There's
would be-
there's not a short list of things. It would be a case by case basis of
okay.
when we try to agendize something that we don't have the power to do. And I don't anticipate that happening very often, but there have been incidents where Dunn has said, hey, this isn't something that you're allowed to do.
Okay. All right. Interesting. All right.
Yes, for example, sometimes a board member may not realize that you can't discriminate against people's ages, and they may put on the agenda, no one under 65 is allowed to, stuff like that. And it has to be removed because it's got other,
Okay.
okay.
Got it. All right.
All right. Then shall we go ahead and vote on motion A to approve the GTLNC November 2nd, 2021 Governmental Affairs Committee minutes as amended? We'll begin with Tess.
Yes.
Kelly,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Motion passes 4-0-0. And I should have said earlier that the amendment passed 3-1-0. Okay, on to public comment. As our sole surviving member of the public, Jonathan, is there anything not on tonight's agenda you wanted to address us about?
There's something on my mind, Catherine, that I would like maybe you help me understand. It feels like there's been more dishonesty, and I say more because the reason I got involved with the neighborhood council is because I don't think everyone is being honest and upfront about their lack or duality of interests. But in the last month or two, I saw some things. I'm just going to be real brief. As far as this committee goes, I'm not real comfortable what I saw take place having to do with that grievance thing. And then it wasn't agendaed. It looked real mysterious to me. And Catherine, I have a profound respect for your intellect. I've watched you speak, you articulate, you read, and you're dedicated. But when you spoke in behalf of carrying forward the grievance committee, it made no sense to me because I think that you clearly, my gut instinct is you understood the bylaws. And even what happened during that meeting, it was in this committee meeting, was Colby later acknowledged he had already run it by Dunn or Gibson, and Gibson had already said to him that he wasn't allowed to do that based on the bylaws, because I've studied English and it wasn't vague what the bylaws said. So it looked very mischievous, and then it didn't show up on the secretary failed to post the agenda, the minutes, I guess it was. And it had Catherine not spoken up, I wouldn't have known what they were doing. And it was just, Catherine, what's going on with all of this kind of stuff? It's like we're supposed to be honest.
I'm not sure exactly which incident you're referring to. If you're referring to the time when I was chairing the general board meeting in the absence of Colby, that was me genuinely just having no idea what that line meant in the agenda, because Colby had prepared the agenda, but he was out of town and not reachable. So in that particular instance, I don't believe there was anything nefarious. I think Colby was just trying to make sure that there was a grievance committee in place temporarily until we could figure out how to hold a vote on Zoom to get a new grievance committee. But let me tell you, I don't agree with Colby on everything, but I don't believe for a single second that he is ever going to intentionally do something nefarious related to GTLNC. Like he does not have that in him. There might be times where he makes a mistake or something, but he is never going to intentionally do something untoward. That's been my experience with him.
The sequence of events was that he had already spoken to Gibson, who had already said to him that he could not carry forward that grievance committee. Now, the issue itself is irrelevant and I don't care, but it's the principle of whether you can have bylaws that people obey. He had already heard from Gibson, he can't do that. And despite that, Gibson had told him no, it was in either the minutes or the agenda, some statement, a line, and you were the one who called it out, and I couldn't see it because it wasn't posted as it should have been. And I just don't know how anyone could see that as anything but nefarious, if you want to use a fancy word, for dishonest. It just seemed wrong.
I honestly don't recall what you're talking about, but I'm very proud that I'm coming out looking good in it. But
I vaguely remember this, and I want to say this is just a perfect storm of accidental events. And Jonathan, I know what you're talking about, and I vaguely remember this. And to Catherine's point, I believe that there, again, maybe let's say mischievous. I don't think that anything was ill intention. I just think there was just a perfect storm of events of a lot of things not happening. And I'm by no means backing anyone's play or anything. This is just my observation that there was nothing that was ill intent. I just think that there was just a series of events that happened that cumulatively looks bad, if that makes sense. And that was my take on it.
Okay, I accept all of this, and I appreciate that you take the time, dedicate some time to this, because what it's done is, after I saw the behavior in the Plum Committee last month, it was so awful. And then what I believe to be dishonest minutes at the last general meeting that I called out, it just left me in a question as to, this is local government. And if we can't sit as neighbors and be honest with each other, it's really forsaken. And that's my whole effort, is to have bylaws that people not only understand and respect because they make sense, but that they obey. Thank you. I don't want to take any more time, but I appreciate, Catherine, that you explained it. And Sean, that you make an effort. I don't know, ultimately, I don't understand. The series of events doesn't look right. And if it's just an accident, it's an accident. But I want everyone to understand that the reason I'm involved with all of this is because the community I live in got no help on including a shooting. Major issues where we got no help from the neighborhood council. That's why we need a structure that creates. Thank you.
Okay. Any committee member news and announcements?
I will say that we have our third neighborhood cleanup this Saturday, December 9th. And boy, do we appreciate you coming out last time, Sean, and hauling trash. Thank you very much. We have photos. We've hauled and removed over 2 cubic tons of trash. We are also planning a safety, I don't know if I'd call it a workshop, but a safety update for residents. I will have more details, and those will probably be set forth in our public safety meeting in January. And
Okay, I think Tess, if there are things that aren't governmental committee related.
okay. Oh, sorry. Well, you just said announcements. So
Well, yeah, for this committee,
Okay.
not just general.
okay, sorry. I did speak to Lee Jameson about well, I'll update you about that because it's on the agenda, the legislation that he seeks to have.
It is not on the agenda right now.
Oh, okay.
Because we're just doing bylaws tonight. So if you have an update, go ahead.
Okay, so Lee Jameson is very interested in having a elder abuse legislative update or statute or law of some kind brought forward to remove the statute of limitations for prosecuting or bringing a civil suit regarding elder abuse. I've spoken to him about that. He's not able to give me a whole lot of details, so I started to do some preliminary research. I don't have much organized to share with the committee at this time, but it's in the works, and I hope to get some more details from Lee when he's in a position to give me, outline his ideas a little bit more clearly. So that's that.
Great.
I have a question.
Thank you.
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
In talking with him, what is, I mean, it was kind of broad stroking, and I remember him talking about that, but is there a specific path he's kind of looking? Is it something that is on a local level? Is it on a state level? I mean, did he kind of give any indication of kind of where he wanted to take this?
He probably wants it large and broad, but of course, we'll start small and local and go from there. And my impression is that he has seen it happen within his own personal sphere and is very concerned about keeping it from happening again, or at least, disabling the statute of limitations from running out on such abuse. And frankly, that's something that I can really get behind. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So yeah. And Lee is Lee has a disability. He has Asperger's, so it's sometimes hard to get him to focus on things, and it takes a few conversations to get him, to get to draw forth the right information from him. And what I plan to do is sort of put some ideas in front of him once he's given me more of his intent, and then we'll go from there, and I'll bring it to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you,
Sure.
Tess.
Sure.
Excellent. Then without further ado, let's dive into the one real item that is on our agenda, which is finishing up the bylaw summary review. And we left off after 11, which was the ad hoc committees. And so that brings us to 12, committee creation and authorization. And Tess, I don't know how you want to tackle this, whether you want to take lead or if it would be helpful for me to put this up on the screen, perhaps.
I have it handy. If anybody else wants it on the screen, speak now.
I'll go ahead and just share the screen so that it's
Yeah.
easy for everyone.
Thank you for that. My
Hopefully.
iPad died, so I have one screen right now.
Great.
So thank you.
So hopefully you can see this now. Number 12 is on our list. This is not the actual section numbers. Essentially, the proposal here being the council will select the committee chairs by a similar election process to the way we select the executive officers. We do need to limit standing committee membership to less than quorum per what Dunn has instructed us. To less than a majority of quorum. Not just for ad hoc committees, but for all committees. We really do need to do that from the latest training module. And then as part of this, we'll include the actual process for how we establish, disband, or change committees, whether they are standing committees or ad hoc committees.
Is there much of a process now, Catherine? There isn't much detail on
No,
that.
no, I believe that right now the bylaws essentially say the president establishes committees.
Well, he establishes the committee chair, but then people just, the board members then join a committee or committees of their choice, and that's encouraged at the first meeting.
Well, technically it says that the president sets the committee membership.
Okay.
Right
In practice, that really hasn't happened, although.
No.
Okay. So, I mean, well, I did get an email from Colby asking me, which committee or committees I wanted to be on. So, I mean, that's nice for him to do. So, but we're at a situation now where we have a majority of quorum on, you've mentioned this, on at least one committee. So
on several committees, I believe public safety, governmental, executive, of course, and I don't think planning does.
I don't think so either. So what do we suggest? Because, it's been mentioned a time or two by various board members that a number of us serve on a bunch of committees and some serve on none.
Correct.
So, I mean, I'd be willing to step down as a committee member from one committee or so, I'm here to try to get things done. I can't be.
Well, and you don't have to be a committee member to attend committee meetings.
Yes, of course. I understand that.
You just have to be a committee member in order to vote at those meetings. And of course, nothing that happens at a committee meeting is final, except the passage of their own committee minutes. Everything else has to go to the general board for vote. So
right.
It's not, especially the way that we have traditionally run committees, it's pretty collegial. And if you show up, you participate in the discussion, people are going to hear you out.
I think there's a level of ownership, though, that people may or may not take pride in being a part of that committee member. It's certainly for me, I enjoy being a part of all of them. But I think a big one of my frustrations is something that Tess did touch base on, and that is that there are people that do not participate. I mean, at this juncture, we're 6 months into this, and there's people that I barely even know because, they're not participating. And I don't think that's necessarily right or fair, but, maybe these are the people that maybe are part of a committee that maybe should be the first to go. So if we have to make sure that we do not exceed the quorum limits, then maybe we should then look at the people who have not been participating and give them an opportunity to move to other areas where there is no quorum limits, or perhaps where we need to then be in good standing, we then can remove said people from those committees that are above those limits, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know, just for everyone's awareness, Colby has been working on talking to everybody and figuring out what committees they want to be on if they have not been active participants thus far. And I know we'd previously talked about actually putting in the bylaws a rule that you have to be a member of at least one committee. And I would maybe at this point throw in the idea of be a member of at least one committee or serve as a liaison on behalf of GTLNC, just in case there are people for whom, a recurring committee assignment might not work, but they can perform other functions for GTLNC, because I do think there are some people who would make great liaisons, but wouldn't necessarily be available for committees. But
well, yeah, and I guess that's an option. And I think how do we establish what a minimum standard of participation is? What is a minimum standard of participation given? Yeah, because I mean, how low can you go and still be recognized as a board member?
And I would say, this is Kelly, I would say that there's also, it's a fundamental issue, because the reason why there has been technically too many board members, the same board members on the committees, is in order for the committees to be effective and actually do anything. Because you have the people that are on the board that actually care about the community, and then you have the people who ran for other reasons. So the idea that people running know that they're going to get bumped off of the whole council if they don't meaningfully participate, I think is important. I'm kind of not that into policing each other, but at the same time, there's no way the committees can actually function if you don't have committed people in them, right? So if you're going to take out some committed people because they're overcommitted and not following the rules because there's too many of the same people, then you got to have other people to replace them with, or the committees are just going to die out.
Mm-hmm.
So there has to be some sort of mechanism where the people that run for the board know that they're going to have to be involved. They can't just be placeholders.
yeah.
Otherwise the whole thing just sort of implodes.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So what's the happy medium?
Well, and we talked about this already. I don't want to, cover it all again, but we talked about the idea that, if you miss a certain number of meetings, then automatically it's agendized that you will be not censured necessarily, but it will be a discussion of your lack of participation. And if you don't rectify that, then you'll be removed. And that can go for both the board as a whole and for committees. Mm-hmm. If you have not shown up for the last 3 meetings, then automatically it's going to be on the next agenda that you are an inactive committee member up for consideration for removal.
Mhm.
Um,
I think that's probably the best we can do.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we are all adults and we are all volunteers. So, you know, we understand that things come up. I had stuff come up last month that took me away from GTLNC, which meant I had to miss our general meeting, which, you know, is rare for me, but I had to. So,
Is
Yeah,
everything okay,
you
Catherine?
know, it all just, sometimes things happen and we do need to give some space and grace for that. But
Yeah, I agree. Is everything okay, Catherine?
everything is fine.
Good. All right. Yeah, I think that seems good to me. So, yeah.
Jonathan, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you. On number 12, just reading it, I recommend that it read a little differently because I had a hard time understanding it. I think it probably needs to say council establishes committees and selects committee chairs. And then the last clause on this, it says establish process to establish. It should just say, I think what is intended here is, I don't know, does it mean that the committees themselves are responsible to change their own committee membership? Or is it the council that changes committee membership? For example, in the situation where the people who are on the board, let's just use an example of this is the Governmental Affairs Committee.
Mhm.
If I was a board member and I wasn't attending, who decides that we need to get rid of me? Would it be the council or would it be the other board members?
So that is where this last line, establish the process to establish, disband or change committees, gets into what is that process? And in my opinion, it ought to be up to the committee chair to do that. However, keep in mind, the council has the ability to replace a committee chair based on what we're proposing here. So, you know, if the council feels that there is an issue with a committee and a committee chair is negligent in their duty to manage committee membership or, you know, allow people to participate effectively, the council as a whole would have the opportunity to replace a committee chair. And therefore that new committee chair could potentially make changes. But that would be my recommendation, is to
Okay.
leave it in the hands of the committee chair, because otherwise the council is just going to get bogged down in minutia, and then we're not
Yes.
going to do anything.
Okay.
But it's worth noting, I noticed this when I started to become more active. I've been attending the public safety meetings for years, for probably, I don't know, four years, maybe 5, intermittently and then very regularly. And then similarly, I started attending the plum meetings. This was long before I was elected. And just sort of by showing up by osmosis, I started to appear as a committee member on the Public Safety Committee roster, but I did not appear as a committee member on Planning and Land Use. No conversation was ever had, no invitation, no discussion. I didn't make a request. I was simply attending as a meeting as a member of the public. And so I just sort of noticed that and thought, oh, isn't that interesting? I don't know that much more needs to be said about it, but some sort of process whereby members of the public know that they can ask, or, you know, in Silver Lake and a couple of other neighborhood councils, I know that if you attend 2 meetings, that you automatically become a committee member, something like that. Maybe we should look into adding that to our bylaws. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it needs to be in the bylaws what the process is for people to join, but we should definitely make sure that at least in standing rules or somehow else, we establish a way to let people know that the public can join committees.
Okay. All right. That's good for me.
Yeah. I would be hesitant to say if you attend 2 meetings that you are a committee member, because I think that is imposing a lot on people automatically.
Well, I'm aware of it. I'm just bringing it up as
Yeah.
a way in which some other committees are handled. I don't know that I approve of that. I'd like to see a greater commitment, but it is done. So that's all.
Yeah. And then as far as the process to establish, disband, or change committees, I think that we just need to make a very simple, if the council feels that there needs to be a new standing committee, then that needs to be a motion at a general board meeting to establish it. Take a vote, either establish it or it doesn't work. If people feel that a standing committee should be disbanded, again, it should be a board vote rather than something that just happens.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right. Sounds good to me.
Great. Which I should clarify, this is for standing committees. For ad hoc committees, we previously discussed, it's okay for the president to establish an ad hoc committee in order to get something done. And of course, everything from any committee, including ad hocs, is not official until it is voted on at a general board meeting by the full board. So
Right.
not doing anything. You're just moving stuff forward so that the board can take action.
Very
Great.
good.
Anything else on 12, committee creation and authorization?
I think we've gotten that one covered.
Great. 13, meeting time, place, notifications, and postings. My proposal was just to simplify the details that are included in the posting information here. It just felt like a lot.
I can live with that.
All right.
It's fine.
Great. For agenda setting, number 14, enable council members to agendize items. So this is what we talked about earlier, is making sure that it is in the bylaws that council members can put things on the general board agenda. And similarly, I think, I don't know if it needs to be in the bylaws or if it should be in the standing rules, but I think committee members should be allowed to add things to committee meeting agendas.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Because if it's a concern for one, it should be concern for all.
Okay.
Figured we would all be in agreement on this one.
Yeah.
100%.
Is there, I'm just sort of taking notes here. I understand that there's a logic to, this has come up a couple of times where at a general board meeting, a member of the public or someone will say, can we discuss, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And they'll be directed to take it to committee first, which generally makes sense. Under what circumstances would a committee be skipped other than an emergency and go straight to a general board meeting, board agenda?
I mean, there are no specific circumstances because there is no actual rule for GTLNC that anything has to go through committee. It's a tradition and it's a recommendation, but there are no circumstances where it must go to committee or it would not go to committee. It's an option right now. Do we want to make that something that is not I feel like
I think it should be a case by case basis. I mean, I think there should also be, it should be like a level of urgency. If it's like, hey, I don't want cats walking on the streets on even numbered days, then that may be something you'd want to go to a committee and then kind of circle it that way. But if there's something that we have the opportunity to affect change, which it will help the community on a huge level, then I think that maybe it could be something that can then be talked about to then put on the board, the general board meeting minutes the following month. I don't know. Does that sound?
Yeah,
kind
well,
of like-
what we're doing here as an example is this could never happen in a general board meeting. There'd be a riot in the streets and nobody would come. We're hacking through the details and the fine print in a committee meeting, which is appropriate, as opposed to.
Is there a way that we could maybe do like an audit to get a pulse of what people are thinking? And then if everyone is on board with the idea of creating that for something, or then moving it to a committee, is there a way we can maybe kind of issue direction?
Can you clarify what you mean? Get pulse of what people are thinking on what exactly?
So let's say there's an item that comes up from maybe it doesn't really matter who it comes up from, but let's say there's someone comes up with something that they feel is important enough to be put on the agendized for something the following month. And is there a way as a whole, we can then, again, for the general board meeting, we can maybe take a poll to determine whether or not everyone, if there is a majority of people that feel that this is something that needs to be addressed immediately. Well, when I use the word immediately, the next board meeting, or if this is something that perhaps doesn't have the level of urgency necessary, that we'd want it to discuss in a specific committee meeting at that time. Is there a way to kind of like?
I would say, Sean, in general, assuming committees are meeting regularly, then if someone brings something at a general board meeting, there will be a committee meeting prior to the next general board meeting. So it could still go to committee and show up on the next general board meeting.
Yeah, I was about to say
Matter
that.
of whether
Yeah.
or not, it's something that's super urgent and requires a special board meeting. And I think if there's anything like that, we'd know.
Yeah, I get it.
It would be pretty instantaneous. It'd be like, oh, this needs to be handled next week. Let's do a special board
Special
meeting.
committee. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
get that. I was just trying to think of all avenues in which this would be applicable. And it's good.
I do want to, I'm sorry, Sean, I didn't interrupt.
No. Go. So I'm good.
I do want to bring up, and I know for sure, Catherine, you'll know what I'm talking about. I want to make sure it's handled. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I just know that this whole idea of things originating in committee and not going directly to a board agenda, a general board agenda, has been weaponized in the past. So it has been used to delay decision-making to the point where then nothing effective could be done. It's been used in a wily kind of way in the past. So however it's written, it needs to be written in such a way that it can't be used, bumping things, not allowing things on a general board agenda, because, oh no, that needs to go back to committee goes to committee first. There needs to be flexibility with that, so it can't be used that way.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And I think what we have right now officially, there is nothing that says it has to go through committee. So that was someone in the past weaponizing tradition rather than bylaws.
Right.
And once we establish that council members can agendize items for a general board meeting, well, then the bylaws say the council member is allowed to put it on there, and the president can't just say no because of tradition.
Okay. So so this is another very important one then.
Yes.
Good. I think that's very important. Okay, good.
Jonathan, you've had your hand up. Did you have a comment on the agenda setting?
Yes, I wanted to remind that just because something is on the agenda doesn't mean it's going to get discussed. Remember, there has to be a board member to second it before it gets discussed. The second thing I was going to mention, we just heard, was that Kelly who just?
Yes.
Okay, what Kelly just said was kind of interesting, something being weaponized. And maybe since that's real and it really happened, I believe her, perhaps you would want to add to the bylaws that in the event that 2 or 3 council members are sponsoring an agenda item, that it must be on the general meeting agenda. Just something to think about. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on agenda setting?
I like that idea. So,
Okay.
All right.
On 15, reconsideration. Right now, anyone can request reconsideration of an agenda item that was previously considered and adjudicated, I don't know what word to use, acted upon. And they have up until right before the next general board meeting. There's no, 72 hours in order to ensure in order to allow for Brown Act compliance, for it to be listed on the agenda. There is no notification of the board member requirements, although in theory it's supposed to be agendized, but like it also isn't set up in a way where it would necessarily be agendized. I will say, and this is a little bit of personal experience and frustration, like Kelly said, this is something that has been weaponized in the past where someone didn't like the vote, and so they wanted people to vote again. And they weren't coming to this with any new information or any changes. They just didn't like it. And so they insisted on taking up time of the general board to have it, to ask for reconsideration at a meeting. And then they just straight up lied about what their reasoning was, which caused a lot of confusion and made people think, oh, well, maybe we should reconsider. And it basically delayed that until it was a moot point. And so one thing that I noticed in another neighborhood council is that only a council member who had voted on the prevailing side could request reconsideration. It couldn't be requested by literally anyone. It had to be someone who supported the prevailing side, whether they voted yes or no, whichever side won.
That's genius.
And so basically it means there has to be at least one person who feels this was an error that was made, as opposed to someone who's just unhappy with the outcome. And I kind of liked that idea so that people wouldn't waste time and people wouldn't,
Kind of an
just
asked and
be
answered
angry
situation.
and use our bylaws against us to waste time at a meeting.
I love this. I think it's a really elegant solution, and I love that there's precedent that other boards have it too.
Yeah, it's awesome.
yeah, I think that's, and prevailing side is whichever side took.
The win,
Yeah,
let's
so
say, if it was a yay
if
or
the
a nay.
motion passed, whoever voted yes. If the motion failed, whoever voted no.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good stopgap. And, as one of my colleagues has said, we can do it and we can correct going forward if it turns out to be misused. So do you recall which neighborhood council uses that, Catherine?
It might be Sorrow, South Robertson, but I'm not positive.
Mhm.
I was reading so many bylaws.
If you
I also
remember-
don't know. The Dunn sent around that template with some sort of like sample bylaw language. It might even be an option that's listed in there. I'd have to go back and check.
Oh, okay, yeah, I have that handy. Yeah, if you see it, could you text me or email me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be interesting to look at some of their meeting minutes and how that, if people there feel like it was appropriately used. So that's good. All right. I'm okay
Okay.
with that.
And as far as establishing a timeline, I would recommend that it be something that needs to be submitted. My personal recommendation is 1 week before the general board meeting. Just to give enough time for the secretary to make sure that it gets on there and that there are no issues with the request or anything.
Yeah, that's fine. You know, part of the trouble with all this is that unless you're really attending these meetings on a regular basis, you don't understand even what the Brown Act is and how this stuff works, and it can seem very Byzantine and mysterious and bureaucratic. But yeah, I think that's fair. A 1 week before the next general board meeting.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
I've lost my little window.
Grievance committee number 16.
So at this point, Tess, I don't know if I'm misunderstanding, but it sounds like Dunn is sort of taking over the grievance process.
Yeah, I've noticed some things coming in from them, and I haven't read too carefully. Let's see. They're taking people for regional, they're creating regional grievance committees is what I see. I'm not sure if I don't know if that's good or bad, but let's see. Neighborhood Council Regional Grievance Panelists, November 30th. Let me just give a 3-sentence summary to everybody here. The Department of Neighborhood Empowerment has certified grievances filed by stakeholders and board members. For those filed by board members and subsequently certified, a regional grievance panel will be formed. If a regional grievance panelist has not yet been appointed by your respective neighborhood council, Dunn is requesting that neighborhood councils take board action to recommend one board member to serve as a panelist to sit on a regional grievance panel. The department, in its sole discretion, may reject or remove any panelist recommended for appointment by the neighborhood council and request the neighborhood council to appoint a replacement panelist. The department may also develop mandatory training required and consultation with the office of the city attorney before a panelist serves on the regional grievance panel. Anyway, yeah, that just came in a week ago. So what do you make of that, Catherine, Sean?
I don't know. It's funny when I read that. The only thing that I question is how they, it's like we choose one person to go, and all of a sudden they decide they don't like that person, and
I have a big problem with that. I have a big problem with that.
And I read that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I had notes on it, but I don't have my notes in front of me. But when I read that, I'm like, well, what's the point? If we elect someone to be a part of the grievance, and then all of a sudden, they decide that they don't want that person for whatever reason.
So I don't know what exactly the reasoning would be, but it's possible if there is a conflict related to the grievance.
And that would make sense. I think that, in that case, then it makes absolute sense. The problem is it was such
just
the language is broad. Yeah, it was just at our sole discretion. It wasn't really.
Yeah,
it kind of drill down.
It says may reject or remove any panelists recommended for appointment and request a replacement panelist. That it's not clear if that's on a case by case basis or generally speaking. And frankly, I don't like in its sole discretion, because this is our neighborhood council and our neighborhood council system, and Dunn is there to provide support and administrative functioning, not
Policing.
not policing us like this. So grievance committee. So it's not clear if Dunn is removing our ability to have our own grievance committee. I don't think they're doing that.
Yeah, that's a little bit confusing, but at this point, why don't we focus on, in the event we still have some sort of a grievance committee or process, how would we like to handle it? And Jonathan, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I agree with you, Catherine, until we know what the Gibson's department does. But what Tess just read, if I heard what she said, wasn't that only in the event of a board member grievance? Or was that for a stakeholder too? It sounded like,
No, it says, it has certified grievances filed by stakeholders and board members.
okay, thank you.
But yeah, actually, you're right, Jonathan. But for those filed by board members and subsequently certified, a regional grievance panel will be formed. So it would appear that the regional grievance panel would only be related to other board members, but not. But the way that it's written.
That's a little confusing, yeah.
Yeah.
But why don't we go ahead and just discuss what we would do right now in the interest of time?
Mhm.
So the proposal here is based on, it's similar actually to, I think, what Jonathan suggested. And there is another neighborhood council that does it this way, where essentially it's kind of like jury duty, where we have a list of stakeholders that would be willing to participate as a grievance committee. And at the time we receive a grievance, we would call up 3 of them and say, will you serve as the grievance committee? And we just go down the list until we get 3 people that are able to participate.
Is it kind of a list or maybe a names in a hat type thing?
Yeah, it would be selected randomly like jury service.
Yeah, I mean, I think the randomness is important because, when you have people who are friends of and aligned with, and you're not really going to get a clear and impartial outcome or impartial adjudication. So, yeah.
And obviously no conflicts of interest if
Yeah.
someone is related to the aggrieved party or is the aggrieved party. They can't.
Yeah,
participate.
I agree. So then this needs clarification from the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. And I don't like this sole discretion business. So we'll get to the bottom of that and see what they have in mind. Yeah, I guess there's nothing further to be done until we are more clear on that.
All right. Anything else on grievance committee?
For me,
Great. For 17, parliamentary authority. If you've glanced at our parliamentary authority section, it's extensive, but also confusing. There is some interpretation that there's an order of operations, but in reality, it's just sort of a list of things, not necessarily an ordered list of events that could happen at a meeting. So one of the proposals, and the one that I'm proposing really is, let's just get rid of all of the, the language about process in here and just say we refer to Robert's rules, which we already state at the beginning. And then it says, except as otherwise directed. And then there's this whole section on the parliamentary authority that's confusing and contradictory and doesn't really provide additional information. Let's just ditch it. Let's make sure that we include the conflict of interest reminder at every meeting. In that section, change the language related to when you have a conflict of interest from abstain to recuse, which are distinctly different things. Right now it says abstain, but you can't just abstain. You have to recuse yourself and not be present at the meeting.
I'm so glad that you said that, because I read that and I'm like, it doesn't make sense. Why are we just not following Robert's rules? And I'm glad that because maybe I just wasn't understanding, but you clearly laid it out. And so you're right, because it just should follow Robert's rules.
Yeah. And then right now, we don't have a requirement to record the specific votes of individuals. We can add that in.
I think that's very important. Yeah, I brought that up last year because that's super important. We need to know how people vote.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but I think it's fine. And right now, the presiding chair and this again, a little bit confusing. It seems to refer to the presiding chair of general board meetings being the president. It doesn't make clear whether or not this applies to committees either, but the presiding chair can't participate in discussion or vote on anything according to what it is now. And if we remove the president from the sole agenda setting authority, my recommendation is that they should be allowed to participate and vote.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree with that too.
Yeah.
Can I go back for 1 second, Catherine, to
Yes.
deleting all the parliamentary authority language, which is fine as long as we're adhering to Robert's Rules of Order. People can just refer to that, put a link in the bylaws or something, except as otherwise indicated. Is there anything in the current bylaws parliamentary authority section that is non-standard or that should remain within our bylaws specifically? In your opinion?
I do not, I am not intimately familiar with Robert's rules, but I don't believe there's anything that directly contradicts it. There are some confusing things in the parliamentary authority section right now, as far as the order of operations, because people have been interpreting it as an order of operations, but as I said before, it's just a list. And so I'd have to take a look at Robert's rules to see if there's anything that contradicts it, but honestly, like, unless we feel very strongly about something needs to be different from the way it is in Robert's rules, I don't see any reason to.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because nobody reads this, and you know,
Yeah.
referring them to Robert's rules, I think is a good, you know, anybody who wants all of this detail on unanimous consent, presiding chair and all that, but with notwithstanding the change that we've just discussed, which is that if the president, enabling the president to participate in the discussion, I think that's good.
Yeah.
All right, I'm okay with that.
And then clarifying the public comment rules is another element in this section, because we sort of have a contradiction where the presiding chair can adjust the amount of time for public comment, but then in another place it says 3 minutes. And so we just have to make sure we set something as, you know, a minimum of X, or, you know, whatever, just make sure that we make it simple and clear, and not contradictory.
Okay,
Yeah, consistent, I think, too.
Yeah.
okay.
Jonathan, I'm so sorry. Your hand is up. I missed that.
Oh, I just put it up. I would mention that requiring the record of votes would be married to that previous one on reconsideration, because in order for a reconsideration, you would need to know who voted favorably and who voted against. So
That is
you'll
an
need,
excellent point.
right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's really crucial, actually. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think every vote should be known. So, and I was rather shocked to find out that that was not the case year and a half ago. So yeah, so that's a good point, Jonathan.
Anything else on parliamentary authority? Hearing none, seeing none. Amendments. So this is amendments to the bylaws. That's what this section is on. And I would just, again, clarify the timeline so that if there is a request for an amendment to the bylaws, right now it says that it should be added to the next general board agenda, which is all well and good, except there are plenty of times when the board can't take any action because Dunn isn't allowing us to change bylaws. So I would just make sure that we include that this request has to be made at least 7 days prior. I think right now it is made at a general board meeting, which is fine. So in that case, there would definitely be well in advance of 72 hours before the next general board meeting. And that it will be agendized on the next general board meeting during a period in which bylaw amendments are permitted. Just so
Permitted
that,
by one. Yeah, okay.
yeah, if someone makes a request, like I made a request to change the no votes or abstentions count as yes votes. And I made that, and then Dunn was just like, no, you can't make any changes right now. And I was like, well, but our bylaws say that I can ask for an amendment. And they're like, cool, we say you can't. So I think we just make sure not to waste people's time.
Right. I agree. All right,
Me too.
good.
Moving on to 19, Code of Civility. And we would just sort of steal language from another neighborhood council regarding.
We got a pretty good, I think you were at the training where that was discussed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take language from, yeah. I agree.
So we just pull some sample language that Dunn has given us for managing disruptive individuals while also adhering to the Brown Act. Because of course the public has a right to speak. However, the public has a right to speak on issues related to the authorities of the neighborhood council. So if there are things that are outside of our authority, we can tell the public that it is outside of our authority and that we are not the proper entity to be addressing.
Yeah, and we also have a right to, if people are being disruptive. This would be especially true in a live meeting, but it also is true in a Zoom meeting that, people get fair warning and then they can be booted.
Yeah. All right,
Can
and then
they be booted or can they be silenced?
Both.
Are we allowed to boot people?
For disruptive behavior, I think so. I mean, although I think silencing them would be the same as booting them.
No, because kicking them out of the Zoom meeting versus silencing, allowing them just to be in the Zoom meeting. I just didn't know if there's a difference, but I didn't know if that was something that can actually be done. I understand the point of like when we had, what's his name on? What the hell is that?
Puppet.
Yes, Puppet. Well, I understand we got to give Puppet his, give him his 3 minutes. I get that. But when it becomes something that's a little belligerent, maybe at that point, like, well, you've lost the right to speak, but you could still listen to the meeting because it's a public meeting. So I just don't know that we're allowed to just full on kick people out. That's the question that I have.
Yeah, that's worth reviewing. So
Well, and it might be something that's a little different for in-person versus Zoom, because on Zoom, you really can just mute someone and prevent them from talking.
Exactly.
But if they're in person and someone keeps standing up and shouting and interrupting, removal might be the only realistic option.
Correct. And I think then maybe it needs to be then in the event of A scenario versus B scenario or something like that.
Yeah.
In the event of live versus Zoom. Because I think there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration with Zoom versus live.
That's important. And who will be assigned the removal? I think it should be you, Sean.
I'm okay with that. I
Okay.
will grab people by the
Well,
ear.
and of course we stream it on YouTube right now, so anyone can go to the YouTube and watch this, even if they can't be in the Zoom.
Correct. So I guess I kind of,
All right. And then last up is training.
Mhm.
And I'd proposed a very harsh, you lose your voting rights during your term if you fail to complete training within 60 days plus a 2-week remedy period, basically.
Sounds good to me.
I'm okay with that. I think that, it's part and parcel to doing this is just getting, and they give you ample enough time to do it. So there's no excuse.
Well, I mean, yes, as long as there's ample time. I mean, I had been asking about planning and land use training because that's one committee where training is required. And there was thundering silence. And then suddenly, like November 21st or 2nd, I got an email from Dunn, and I had less than 10 days to complete it. Now, I managed it. That's okay. But I just thought, after asking repeatedly, why the rush, especially when people are traveling and during the holidays? It was inconvenient. They ended up extending it because they were having internal problems. But yeah, as long as there's sufficient time, I think there's a forgetfulness on the part of some city staff that our lives don't revolve around this.
Wait, what?
Our lives don't revolve around this. We can't
Wait. Oh, damn. I thought that's what we were supposed to do.
So yeah, but I try to take the training as quickly as possible, because otherwise, it just piles up. Anyway, but I think
Understood.
I'm good with that, Catherine. Kelly?
Yeah, and maybe we could have it be, 60 days after it expires, the next general board meeting, there will be an announcement of a 2-week warning. So, everyone will know that that's coming at the board meeting, because it'll be in the agenda that they should be reading before the board meeting. And so, we give even a little bit more grace in case people.
Yeah, and I didn't realize this, but I noticed that people are shamed in these monthly reports.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Yeah, we're out of compliance. So anyway. Oh. All right. Well, I think we're good. I think
Can I say something on training?
Sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure.
go ahead, Jonathan. I apologize.
Okay, I'll lower my hand now. I'll tell you the problem that I saw, and then I'll tell you what I recommend, but I don't know that that's correct for you. You recall Jake was added to the board as the youth member. It was talked about that he couldn't vote because he hadn't done his training. The secretary never put that in the minutes. Then maybe he did, or maybe he didn't complete his training, but the following meeting, the president never knew to announce whether or not the training had been completed and if Jake could vote or not vote. That was a problem for me, just watching the meeting and looking in the minutes and seeing that it wasn't agended. I mean, it wasn't recorded in the minutes as a topic, so I understood why the president forgot to follow up on it in the following meeting, because it wasn't recorded. What I would recommend is that the essential part of all training for a board member is that they have to announce that training completion in the board meeting, the general board meeting. If they don't, then there's no way for me as a stakeholder to have a record or to know when someone's completed, but also.
So if you go to empowerla.org, it does list all of our current training and its expirations.
But I mean, I'm okay with it if you want to do it that way, but the problem that you get into is if board members aren't announcing when they complete their training in the meetings, it seems to me that other board members don't know it either. How do they know?
I mean, yes, that's true, but I think a lot of people, honestly, I just don't want to bog down our meetings with bureaucracy when that stuff is publicly available information. And we all do get, as Tess mentioned, we get a monthly report that does list out anyone whose training is out of date.
Oh, I see. So did Jake ever complete his training?
I would have to double check, but I believe he did.
See, that's the problem I'm saying is it just takes about a second for somebody to say, my training's complete. By not making it a part of the completion step, other board members don't know it. And I have a feeling in the plum, it's essential. I mean, in that particular committee,
It
the
is.
training is
It
essential
is.
because a lot of money is going on there in redevelopment. So I don't know, training to me is a big deal because I think some people aren't doing it. And I don't know. I mean, it's a lot to go back and research them.
Well, here's a possible solution. I think if a link is included in the general board minutes or the general board agenda or minutes are, board members who are up to date on training. That's a easy click through that can be viewable by the board members themselves, some of whom may be unaware of that. Well, they should be, and members of the public like Jonathan who are less familiar with that and the fact that it's available. So I think that's probably a good thing.
I just see the culture of the neighborhood council is that other board members don't know who is enabled to be voting based on their training, because no one knows if Jake has trained or not, and it's been 2 months. Anyways, that's what I see as a problem, and it could be addressed here by requiring a board member to announce their completion of training. You don't get that much training, do you?
No.
So it's not
It's
that.
a couple hours.
No, I mean the frequency of different things you have. It's just, I mean, it wouldn't be that.
Yeah, it's
But
once
if a
per year,
board
a
member
couple
isn't
hours.
volunteering it, then other board members are not going to know unless they research it. Anyway, you get my point. Thank you.
Yeah, I will say, at least according to our current monthly profile, I don't believe that anyone is out of date, which means that Jake has taken it. However, it's
He's not
not
on it.
listed yet on the Empower LA website at all. So
Yeah, his name's not on it. I'm actually, I wanted to look that up. His name's not, it does not appear part of the board.
yeah, so that's something we need to correct. There's also Tess, your name is spelled wrong for the Plum Committee.
How nice.
And
Okay.
you don't have any training listed, so we'll
Actually,
have
you know
to talk
what?
to Gibson.
Yeah, but it's worth mentioning here, and thanks for pointing that out. Empower LA, because I have completed the training, and for those whose training may not be up to date yet, and mine should be 100% up to date, they've had a problem with the portal. I had to sign on to the training and complete it under another username, and it was rather confusing because they've been having, they're trying to do a system-wide update that hasn't worked.
Well, according to this, you're good. You are good. Everything shows that you've completed everything, Tess.
Including my planning and land use.
No, Fred's the only one that has that listing. No one, according to this, has it.
Okay, well, that's interesting because I just completed it last week. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, I think I'll email Gibson after this meeting to let him know that Jake still isn't listed as our youth representative. It says vacant seat, and that there's not updated planning and land use, and that your name is spelled wrong as a member of planning and land use on the Dunn website.
Okay, thank you. And in fact, I think I'm reasonably sure that most of the people here have completed their training, but I don't know exactly what their what do you call it? And yeah, this committee membership is wrong. Colby specifically said he was not a committee member, and they're missing someone. Okay, that's all right. Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we wrapped up our bylaws changes summary. Yay.
Good.
And we plan to discuss the standing rules that will accompany the bylaws at a future meeting in the interest of everybody's time and sanity this evening. And that brings us to our new business future projects, which is still bylaws, but what sort of our schedule is for submitting the bylaws amendments. I will remind everyone that they are due by April 1st of 2022. So we don't want to delay too much, but as Tess mentioned, the sort of theory would be we make a very clear version of the bylaw changes summary document that we were going through this evening, this document. And have that at the January meeting for discussion and agreement on. I don't know, Tess, do you feel that we'd want people to vote, like actually take a vote on it? Because it wouldn't really be an action, because we'd still need to go back and do the red line.
I think a vote would be good, if we, if it's clear that this is a summary and have a general discussion, not going too deeply into the weeds on any point, which hopefully we can manage that and get people's concerns, thoughts, and ideas. Do you generally approve of these concepts? And yes or no? And if yes, then we will work on the red line and bring that to you at the next meeting, or, in 2 meetings. I think we want people to commit to what we're doing.
I mean, Tess, I will call you out as the person who says reserves the right to change my mind.
That's
really
true.
Every time I have a conversation with you.
Well,
So,
okay. Well, that's not entirely true, but I think reserving the right to change our mind, and that's fine. I mean, because this is a living, breathing document, and we haven't. I've never done bylaws before, but I've done a lot of research, and there's great authorities available on this, and plenty of templates, and people who've been doing it right and well for a long time. And certainly I've run meetings and a company, so I know something about how this works. So I think voting on it is a good idea to get people to commit, and tell me what you think.
I mean, I'm inclined to not deal with a vote because that just takes up process time. I'd rather just have it be a discussion. And if there are
A discussion on
items
all the
that are
topics?
particularly content, sorry, go ahead, Sean.
No, I was gonna say, it would be a discussion on all the items that are pertinent, and then vote later to kind of a broad stroking vote, or do we need a situation where we need to maybe have the discussion, discuss what we like, don't like, and then once we get it hammered down, then vote? Or do you want to vote line by line type thing?
I think voting line by line would drive everybody insane.
Yeah, let's do that. I'm just kidding.
My recommendation is that we present this and we say, if there are items that you have an issue with or that you require clarification on,
Have them
let's
write it in
have that
triplicate.
conversation. But as Jonathan recommended at a previous meeting, if people agree with something, let's not belabor it. Let's not talk about why it's such a great idea. Let's just move forward.
Absolutely.
So basically, anything that people disagree with, let's welcome them to cite their reasons and have a discussion based on that. But if people are good with something, let's say people are good with it, and only go over the things that are contentious. Which
Okay.
hopefully will be limited.
I think that's a great plan.
Okay.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Perhaps you could call this at the meeting solicitation of objections, so that you'll, at the end of the meeting, I understand, Catherine, that to have a vote on something that's not hard, black and white, is hard.
Yeah.
But you could have a solicitation of objections so that at the end of the meeting, if it isn't, if a defined objection, then it's not on the table anymore. So that might be a good way to manage the first. In other words, make it clear that if there isn't an objection posed at that meeting, then it's not on the table later.
Great.
And I don't know how you can compel certain board members to even read it since they didn't read other things, but that certainly should be part of it, that they have to have read and not just sit and vote.
I am hoping that, and Tess made the document I'd originally made even more concise. So I am hoping that this 1 3/4 page document is one that people will read, especially if we specifically tell them, this is what we're talking about at this meeting. I'm sending you an email to remind you that you need to review this prior to the meeting.
Well,
Will
yeah.
they? I don't know, but
Well, listen, that's the best we can do. And if people don't take their job seriously, then I don't know what to do about them. It bothers me, but we will have done our job, and then they may or may not do theirs, and we move on accordingly. But yeah, people who don't read are annoying.
I have a question.
Sorry about
No. Similarly to how we take our training, and you just can't click through it. You gotta spend time on it. You gotta read it. And I'm not saying we need to do something that drastic, but I mean, is there a way that we could require maybe people to kind of spend at least 5 minutes reading the document, have a timer on it, and then maybe have them like DocuSign at the bottom saying that they read and understand these documents, or something like that? Is that or is that just beyond?
I'm sure that is something that is possible technologically. Whether or not we as GTLNC have the subscriptions to allow us to do that, I don't believe that is something
Is it just overkill?
I mean, I can do a screen share video on YouTube that just slowly reads it out loud to them.
Oh, that would be genius.
Well,
that's good work.
How much do we want to dumb things down?
I think we just have to expect people to do it. And if they don't read it, then they don't get to object to things.
Yeah.
I agree. They kind of disenfranchise themselves, and
Yeah.
so be it.
And then we move on. Yeah. All right.
Okay. I like it.
So a quick review. Catherine, are you going to email about the Plum Committee members and training? Actually, you know
Yes.
what? I'm going to do so as well, because I'll just present them with my certificate of completion. I made sure that I saved that.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
yeah, I'll do that too. All right, good. All
All
right.
right. And then as far as submitting the bylaw amendments, my hope is that January meeting will go over this list that we've discussed tonight. And we'll have our standing rules in enough of a shape that if people have questions, we can say, well, this is how it's addressed in the standing rules. And then February, maybe we have a red line.
Okay.
Sounds
So
good.
hold on a second. So Catherine, then in our January government affairs meeting, we go over standing rules and then possibly red line in February for the bylaws. Is that what you just said?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's feasible.
All right. Jonathan?
Just a quick question so I understand. At the next general board meeting, that would be in January, that you
Yes.
would submit the bylaws, and if in order,
The
anything
summary
that isn't
document.
okay, and any objections not proposed at that point in time are off the table.
I mean, they're not off the table ever, because the bylaws, of course, need 2/3 vote in order to pass. So if someone has an issue,
Okay,
but yeah, I mean, we would not, I'm personally not interested in entertaining dragging this out forever and ever, because if there is some issue that comes up in February, we need to get this done at the March meeting. We
Yeah.
cannot
I
go
think it
past
needs-
March.
it has
Yeah.
to be very quickly now because April comes quick and I don't think
Yep.
you can trust the city government. They may, they go on holiday early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so-
I think it's necessary to go quickly. Okay.
Okay.
Is it necessary to maybe do if we have to call a special meeting for something similar to this, if we do not get it done?
we
I
could.
think that's reasonable. My
Yeah.
hope is that the language that we're going to put in the red line is largely language we know Dunn has approved. I really so appreciate the fact that they finally put together sample bylaw language for us. And I have every intention of wholesale stealing it, because if they think it's good enough, then I think it's good enough a lot of the time. So yeah, I'm hoping that we won't get issues from Dunn, but if Dunn comes back to us and says this is not approved, we may need to have a emergency.
Yeah, well,
special meeting.
I think the most important thing is to get it through our council and remain as much in compliance as possible with Dunn, but getting our people on it first and foremost, and
Mhm.
then dealing with Dunn by April. Okay, that sounds good.
Right, great. Anything else before we adjourn?
No.
All right, then.
I wish
sorry,
everyone a
Jonathan.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, because that will occur before we meet again, right?
Yep,
100%.
it will.
So I wish
Indeed.
everybody the best.
Happy
Thank you.
holidays,
You too, Jim.
everyone.
Jonathan.
I
Everyone
will
take good care of
close the
yourselves.
meeting at 8:04 p.m. Thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Take care,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.